She mocked the legends of human warriors, until one fought before her HFY Sci-Fi story, HFY Stories on a distant world, far beyond the reaches of human civilization. A grand event was about to take place. The planet of Zaloth was known for its colossal tournament that brought together the fiercest warriors from all corners of the galaxy. Once every decade, beings from hundreds of worlds gathered to compete for supremacy in combat, each hoping to claim the ultimate prize, an artifact of unimaginable power. The artifact, a crystal of pure energy, could alter the future of civilizations. It was said to give its wielder the ability to reshape entire star systems, and whoever claimed it would be able to command armies, or even change the course of history itself. Jyra, the princess of the Zalian race, stood at the edge of the arena, watching the massive crowd roar as another alien warrior took their place in the tournament. Jyra was tall, graceful, and fierce, with eyes like glowing emeralds that seemed to pierce the very souls of those who dared to meet her gaze. Her skin shimmered with a faint iridescent hue, a gift from her people's connection to the energy-rich planet they hailed from. The Zalians were powerful, not only in physical strength, but also in their mastery of technology and combat techniques that were beyond the imagination of most species. Jyra was a product of this culture, and she wore her superiority like a crown. As the crowds cheered for the latest alien gladiator to enter the arena, Jyra couldn't help but feel a sense of boredom. She had seen so many warriors rise to the challenge, only to fall before the might of her people. The Zalians were unmatched in battle. Their warriors were able to bend energy to their will, moving with such speed and precision that it seemed they could read the very thoughts of their opponents. No one had ever stood a chance against them, and Jyra herself was one of the fiercest warriors of her people. For years, she had heard tales of the so-called human warriors, legends that spoke of a race of beings who were once feared across the galaxy for their courage and ferocity. But Jyra found these stories laughable. How could a primitive species like humans, with their tiny, fragile bodies and simple weapons, possibly be considered a threat to beings like herself, who had transcended the limits of physical and technological advancement? To her, the stories were just that, stories. Myths that had long since lost their relevance. "You must be joking," Jyra had said one day, laughing as her advisors spoke of the human legends. A human warrior defeating an entire fleet of warriors from the Sarnox system. Ridiculous. Her mockery of the humans' supposed greatness became well known, and soon the galaxy's other leaders began to whisper about it. Many found it amusing, but Jyra's mocking attitude toward the human race started to draw the attention of some who had once revered the tales of these warriors. It wasn't long before a challenge was issued. The challenge came in the form of a human representative, a warrior who would fight in the tournament to prove the truth behind the legend. Jyra laughed when she heard the news. Surely, no human could possibly defeat her or any of the warriors she would face. The human representative was none other than Captain Elijah Cole, a decorated combat specialist from Earth. The moment Jyra heard the name, she rolled her eyes. The idea that a human could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's greatest warriors was laughable. How could a human, who had never even seen the kinds of advanced technology the Zalians used, possibly compare to the best warriors from across the stars? The tournament began with a grand opening ceremony, and the arena, a floating platform high in the sky, was packed with spectators from countless worlds. Jyra, wearing the traditional attire of her people, a shining, form-fitting suit that allowed for maximum mobility, took her place among the other competitors. She felt confident, her every movement a testament to the strength and skill she possessed. As the other warriors entered the arena, each showcasing their unique abilities, Jyra stood tall and proud, knowing that victory would be hers once again. But then, the human entered the arena, Elijah Cole was not tall or imposing like the other competitors. He was relatively short for a human, his dark hair cut short and his features unremarkable. His eyes, however, were steady, filled with a quiet determination that Jaira could not help but notice. The moment he stepped into the arena, the crowd grew silent. Some whispered, wondering if this was the human representative they had heard so much about. Jaira, standing at the center of the arena, narrowed her eyes at him. She couldn't understand what all the fuss was about. He was wearing standard combat gear, not the advanced armor that most of the other competitors wore. His weapon was nothing special, a standard energy blade, one she had seen 1,000 times before. With a smirk, Jaira stepped forward. "Is this the human warrior who would challenge me?" she called out, her voice carrying across the arena. "How amusing." Elijah didn't answer her. He simply took his stance, his eyes focused ahead, his body perfectly still. Jaira was about to dismiss him completely when she saw something in his posture. It wasn't arrogance or confidence. It was something else, something more subtle. It was the kind of focus she only saw in the eyes of the most seasoned warriors. Despite his lack of imposing presence, there was something dangerous about him. The first round of the tournament began, and Jaira's opponents were easily dispatched, their efforts little more than an annoyance. She moved like lightning, using her people's natural energy manipulation to overwhelm them in seconds. With every victory, her confidence only grew, and soon she found herself at the top of the bracket, waiting for her final opponent, the human. The next few days were filled with even more fierce battles. The other warriors, though skilled, were no match for her, and the crowd began to murmur in disbelief at how easily she tore through them. As the final round drew near, Jaira could sense the growing anticipation, especially regarding her upcoming match against the human. Many of the spectators, who had originally mocked the idea of a human in the tournament, were now curious about this mysterious human warrior. Jaira, however, could not be bothered by such thoughts. She was certain the human would fall before her. After all, how could someone so small, so weak, defeat the might of the Xalian warrior? It was unthinkable. As the final match approached, the arena grew tense with excitement. Jaira's heart raced with anticipation, but not for fear. It was for the chance to destroy the myth of the human warrior once and for all. She would teach them all a lesson about the true meaning of strength. No myth, no legend, could stand against the power of the Xalian race. She stepped into the arena, her eyes locked on Elijah Cole. This time, her smile was not mocking, but cold and determined. The match was about to begin. The arena was filled with excitement as the tournament continued. The air seemed to crackle with energy, and the roars of the audience echoed throughout the floating coliseum. Gladiators from across the galaxy showcased their strength, speed, and skill, each more impressive than the last. The stakes were high and the competition fierce. But amidst all the alien warriors, it was Elijah Cole, the human, who captured the crowd's attention. At first, no one thought much of him. The human appeared small and unimposing compared to the towering figures of the other competitors. He wore simple combat gear, nothing fancy, and wielded only a basic energy blade. His weapon was far less advanced than the high-tech weaponry of the Xalians and other species. To most of the spectators, Elijah was a joke, a novelty, just a human among giants. Jaira watched from the edge of the arena with a smirk on her face. She couldn't understand why everyone seemed so interested in this human. His movements were stiff at first, his actions lacking the grace of an experienced fighter. But there was something about him. The more she watched, the more she noticed a quiet intensity in his eyes. It was as though he was studying his opponents carefully, learning from each encounter. The tournament continued with one competitor after another falling before Jaira's mighty strength. Her opponents, whether they were from the Drelshar, the Tarvok, or the Vrasha, were no match for her. She dispatched them with effortless precision, her mastery of energy manipulation making each fight appear almost too easy. The crowd cheered for her, but Jaira felt no joy in these victories. She was used to them. Winning had become predictable. Then Elijah's first match came. His opponent, a fierce alien warrior from the Vrasha, was well known for his incredible speed and strength. The Vrashan was massive, with muscles bulging under his shimmering, armored skin. To many, it seemed like an easy victory for the alien. But Elijah wasn't intimidated. When the match began, the Vrashan charged at him, roaring in fury. He swung his massive fists, each punch capable of crushing stone. Elijah dodged the first blow effortlessly, rolling to the side with surprising agility. The crowd gasped. They had expected him to be crushed immediately, but instead, Elijah was moving with speed and precision that most warriors would struggle to match. His body seemed to flow, his movements more like a dancer than a fighter. The Vrashan swung again, but Elijah ducked low and delivered a powerful strike to the alien's leg. The Vrashan howled in pain and staggered back, clearly surprised by the human's strength. Elijah didn't waste a moment. He closed the gap between them, using his opponent's momentary weakness to land a clean strike to the alien's side. The Vrashan tried to retaliate, but Elijah was already moving again, keeping his distance and waiting for another opening. He wasn't here to overpower the Vrashan, he was here to outsmart him. As the fight continued, Elijah's strategy became clear. He wasn't interested in brute force. Instead, he relied on his speed, reflexes, and the ability to read his opponent's movements. The Vrashan, despite his raw power, couldn't keep up with Elijah's tactics. Every time the Vrashan attacked, Elijah was one step ahead, his mind working faster than his opponent's instinctive reactions. With a final, well-timed strike, Elijah disarmed the Vrashan, sending the alien sprawling to the ground. The crowd went silent at first. They had expected to see a quick, brutal fight, and yet the human had won, not with strength but with strategy. When the referee raised Elijah's hand in victory, the audience slowly began to cheer. This was no ordinary human. Jaira, sitting on her throne above the arena, couldn't help but feel a sense of discomfort. She had been so sure that the human would fail, just like all the others. But there was something different about him. His calm, collected demeanor was unsettling. His movements were fluid and his eyes never wavered, always focused on the task at hand. She had seen countless warriors, but none like him. The next day, the tournament continued. Jaira dispatched another opponent with ease, her energy manipulation allowing her to control the battlefield with effortless grace. She could feel the growing excitement in the air, the anticipation for the final showdown. It wasn't just the warriors who were eager for the fight, it was the entire galaxy. The human, it seemed, had become a symbol of hope for many. His victory over the Vrashan was proof that humans, despite their perceived weaknesses, had something unique to offer. And Elijah, he was becoming something of a legend in his own right. The following rounds were no less thrilling than the first. Elijah faced opponents from a variety of species, each stronger and more dangerous than the last. The first was a deadly female warrior from the Tarvok. She was known for her agility and her deadly close combat techniques. She charged at Elijah, moving with a speed that should have overwhelmed him. But once again, Elijah didn't rely on strength. He read her moves, dodging her strikes and waiting for the perfect opportunity to counter. Every time she attacked, Elijah's blade danced through the air, narrowly missing his opponent's vital points. Finally, with a well-timed strike, he knocked her off balance and pinned her to the ground, ending the match. The next fight was against a monstrous alien from the Varkal species. The Varkal was nearly 7 feet tall, with thick, armored skin that could withstand most forms of attack. Its claws were like daggers, capable of shredding steel. The Varkal charged, but Elijah didn't flinch. He knew that if he engaged the alien in close quarters, he would be torn apart. So he used his agility to keep his distance, baiting the Varkle into making mistakes. He darted around the alien, striking when at least expected. It wasn't long before the Varkle, exhausted and frustrated, faltered, allowing Elijah to disarm it with a swift move that left the alien stunned. As the tournament progressed, Elijah's reputation grew. No longer was he seen as a mere human. He was a fighter, a warrior who could hold his own against beings far more powerful than himself. His victories were not the result of overwhelming strength, but of a sharp mind and unyielding determination. Each fight he proved more and more that there was more to humanity than the galaxy had given them credit for. Jaira, still watching from her perch, found herself growing more and more intrigued. The human had survived round after round, and each time he impressed her more than the last. His calm resolve, his ability to read his opponents and outthink them, set him apart from every other fighter in the tournament. Despite herself, she couldn't help but wonder if there was something to the legends of human warriors after all. By the time the final round of the tournament approached, Jaira's curiosity had reached its peak. She had faced many warriors in her life, but none who fought with the same strategic brilliance that Elijah displayed. The final match was just around the corner. Jaira's heart beat faster, her excitement growing. She had no doubts about her own strength, but the human was becoming a challenge she hadn't anticipated. She could feel the weight of the tournament's significance pressing down on her. She had mocked humanity for so long, but now she would face their champion in combat. Elijah Cole, the human warrior, had earned his place in the final round. And Jaira, the Zalian princess, knew that she would have to give everything she had to defeat him. The day of the final battle had arrived. The floating arena was buzzing with anticipation, the air thick with tension. Warriors from all corners of the galaxy had gathered to witness this historic moment. The champion of the tournament, a human, was about to face off against Jaira, the princess of the Zalian people. The grandstands were packed, the crowd murmuring with excitement. Jaira stood at the center of the arena, her sharp eyes scanning the gathered spectators. She could feel their energy, their excitement. Most of them had never seen a human warrior fight before, and now they were about to witness one face-off against her, the most skilled fighter in the galaxy. Jaira could hear whispers about Elijah, the human, who had taken down opponent after opponent with astonishing strategy and precision. It was clear now that he wasn't just another fighter. He was a force to be reckoned with. But none of that mattered to Jaira. She had never doubted her own strength, and she certainly didn't plan on losing to a human. The Zalians were powerful beyond measure, their connection to energy allowing them to manipulate the very environment around them. Jaira herself had mastered this art, and she had never met a warrior who could match her in combat. Today, however, would be different. She could feel the weight of her thoughts, the pressure of her position as the last line of defense between her people and the humans' growing legend. As she stood in the arena, waiting for the match to begin, Jaira could hear the crowd's whispers turn to murmurs of awe. There, stepping onto the field, was Elijah Cole. He was alone, no flashy armor or advanced weaponry, just a man in simple combat gear. There was no hint of fear in his eyes, no sign of hesitation. He was calm, his face set in a focused expression as he made his way to the center of the arena. The crowd had grown quiet now, waiting for the battle to unfold. Jaira felt her heart beat a little faster, but not out of fear. No, it was the thrill of the challenge. She would show this human warrior just how outmatched he was, how futile it was to pit his kind against the might of the Zalians. She knew that her speed, strength, and mastery of energy manipulation would overwhelm him within minutes. And yet, despite her confidence, something in the back of her mind made her uneasy. She couldn't quite shake the feeling that this fight might not be as easy as she had expected. The referee raised his arm to signal the beginning of the match. The crowd held its breath. Jaira moved first, of course. She was the faster of the two, and she wasted no time in closing the distance between herself and Elijah. Her feet barely touched the ground as she shot forward, her body a blur of motion. She struck quickly, her hand glowing with energy as she sent a pulse toward Elijah. The blast was fast and powerful, designed to disorient and weaken an opponent. But Elijah was already moving. He ducked low, his reflexes quick, narrowly avoiding the blast as it struck the ground where he had just been standing. The crowd gasped. The human had dodged it. Jaira's eyes narrowed. She had expected him to be fast, but this was different. She had never seen anyone move with such precision, avoiding the blast as if he had known exactly where it would land. His movements weren't instinctual like the other warriors. They were calculated, precise. Jaira felt a flicker of respect for him, but it was quickly swallowed by her own pride. He was still no match for her. She advanced again, using her energy manipulation to create a shield of shimmering light around her hand. She attacked with rapid, focused strikes, each designed to break through her opponent's defenses. Elijah was forced to retreat, moving swiftly around the arena as Jaira's energy blasts created craters in the ground where they landed. But Elijah didn't panic. He moved with purpose, his eyes never leaving Jaira. He wasn't trying to fight her strength, he was trying to find a way to use it against her. Each time she attacked, he dodged, studying her moves, learning her rhythm. He could tell that Jaira's attacks were powerful, but they were also predictable. She relied too much on her strength and her energy manipulation. If he could tire her out, find a weakness in her strategy, he might be able to turn the tide. For several minutes, the fight continued, each of them trying to gain an advantage over the other. Jaira's energy blasts were relentless, but Elijah's agility allowed him to evade them time and again. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, watching as the two warriors danced around each other, their movements a blur of speed and precision. Elijah's strategy was clear now. He was using Jaira's power against her, forcing her to waste energy with every attack that missed. Jaira's frustration began to grow. She wasn't used to being outmaneuvered like this. She was Jaira, princess of the Zalian people, undefeated in battle. She had never been forced to fight this hard. Her confidence wavered for the briefest of moments, but she quickly regained her composure. She would not be outsmarted by this human. She was better than him in every way. With a fierce battle cry, Jaira unleashed a massive wave of energy, a shockwave that shook the entire arena. The ground cracked beneath their feet as the blast sent Elijah flying back. The crowd gasped in shock as Elijah tumbled through the air, barely managing to regain his footing before hitting the ground. For a moment, it seemed like the fight was over. Jaira stood tall, watching as Elijah struggled to rise. His body was battered, his breath ragged, but he refused to stay down. Slowly, Elijah got back to his feet, his eyes locked on Jaira's. He wasn't done yet. Jaira tilted her head slightly, intrigued. She had seen many warriors fall after such an attack. But Elijah, this human, was still standing. She could see the determination in his eyes. It wasn't just his body that was fighting her. It was his will. He was refusing to give in. And for the first time in the tournament, Jaira realized that this fight might not be as easy as she had believed. Elijah took a deep breath, shaking off the dust and debris. He could feel the weight of the battle on his shoulders, but he wasn't going to give up. He had come too far to back down now. Jaira, seeing his resolve, felt a spark of something unexpected. She had always believed that strength came from power, from the ability to crush your opponent without hesitation. But Elijah's strength was something different. It was his willpower, his refusal to back down in the face of overwhelming odds. She had never encountered a warrior like him, and that thought made her angry. Without warning, Jaira launched herself at Elijah again, her energy flowing around her like a storm. This time she wasn't holding back. She would end this fight now once and for all. But Elijah was ready. He sidestepped her attack, his movements fluid, and with a precise strike, he knocked her energy shield aside. It was a small opening, but it was enough. For a split second, Jaira's defense was down, and Elijah took his chance. He darted in, closing the distance between them. With one final, well-timed strike, Elijah's energy blade connected with Jaira's side, sending her staggering backward. The crowd erupted in shock and disbelief. Jaira, the undefeated princess, had been struck. She stumbled, her eyes wide with surprise. She had never been hit like this before, and the force of the blow left her breathless. She stood there for a moment, unsure of what had just happened. Elijah, breathing heavily, stood his ground, waiting for her next move. He had done it. He had landed a hit on Jaira. Jaira's heart pounded in her chest. She had been sure that the human would fall. But now, with the sting of his strike still sharp in her side, she knew that this fight was far from over. The battle between Jaira and Elijah had reached a point of exhaustion. Both warriors were battered, their bodies bruised from the fierce exchanges that had taken place. The once pristine arena was now littered with scorch marks, cracked stone, and deep craters where their powerful attacks had struck. The crowd, which had been roaring with excitement since the beginning, was now quiet. They were watching the most intense battle of the tournament, a clash between a being who had never been defeated in combat and a human who was somehow defying all expectations. Jaira stood in the center of the arena, her breathing heavy, her chest rising and falling with each inhale. She had never been pushed to her limits like this before. Every warrior she had faced, even the fiercest ones, had eventually succumbed to her overwhelming strength. She had believed that power, speed, and control over energy were the only things that mattered in battle. But Elijah, he had proven her wrong. His strategy, his focus, and his unyielding spirit were something she had never encountered. She had expected the human to collapse under pressure, to give in to the brutal assault she had unleashed. But instead, he had withstood everything she threw at him, each time coming back stronger, more determined than before. She looked across the arena and saw Elijah standing, equally battered but unbowed. His energy blade was still in his hand, though it had lost some of its sharpness. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with sweat and dust, but his eyes were still locked on hers. There was no fear in them, no hesitation, only a quiet, unshakable resolve. It was a look she had seen before in the eyes of the greatest warriors, but she had never seen it in a human. It was the spirit of someone who refused to accept defeat, no matter the cost. Jaira's mind raced. She had always believed that strength came from power, that victory was determined by who could hit hardest and fastest. But Elijah, he had shown her something different. His strength wasn't just in his muscles or his speed, it was in his will. His ability to keep going, to keep fighting, even when the odds were stacked against him, was something Jaira had never experienced in anyone before. She had always considered her own people to be the greatest warriors in the galaxy, but now she wasn't so sure. With a deep breath, Jaira steadied herself. She could feel the power surging within her, the energy of her planet flowing through her veins, giving her strength. She could end this fight now with a single move, but as she gathered the energy for her final strike, she hesitated. For the first time in her life, she questioned herself. Was this what strength truly was, crushing your opponent with sheer power, or was it something more? She glanced at Elijah, who stood there waiting, his breath ragged. He was tired just as she was, but he hadn't given up. His strength wasn't in his body alone. It was in his heart. The way he had fought, the way he had refused to back down, was something Jaira had never seen before, and it made her wonder, could she defeat him, knowing that? Elijah, sensing the shift in the air, took a step forward. He was feeling it too. The energy in the arena had changed. There was something different now. Jaira wasn't the same as she had been at the start of the battle. She wasn't just the confident princess of the Xalian people anymore. She was someone who had been forced to confront the truth. That strength wasn't just about power. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His eyes spoke volumes. His stance remained steady, his mind focused. He had come this far not because of brute strength, but because of his belief in something greater than himself. It was his determination, his ability to keep going when the world seemed to be crashing down around him, that had brought him this far. And it was this spirit that made him a warrior, one that Jaira had never expected to face. The two warriors stood there for a moment, locked in a silent understanding. Jaira, despite all her strength, was forced to confront the truth. Elijah had won something far more important than any battle. He had proven that there was more to combat than physical strength. There was something deeper, something that couldn't be measured in energy pulses or the force of a blow. It was the will to fight, to stand firm even when everything seemed lost. Jaira took a step back, lowering her weapon. She had been preparing to end the fight, to claim victory. But now, something had changed within her. She had seen a different kind of power, one that had nothing to do with the force of a blow. It was the power of the human spirit. And for the first time in her life, Jaira found herself questioning what it meant to be strong. Elijah, seeing her hesitation, didn't move. He knew that this wasn't just a physical battle anymore. It was something deeper. Jaira was a warrior. She knew the value of strength. But now she was learning that strength wasn't just about dominating others. It was about standing tall when everything else was crumbling. It was about pushing forward, no matter the odds. It was about fighting for something greater than yourself. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The arena was still, the crowd waiting for something to happen. The fight had reached a crossroads. Jaira could end it now with all her power, but she would know, she would feel that it wasn't truly victory. Elijah had shown her that there was something more to a warrior than raw power. Finally, Jaira spoke, her voice low but clear. "You have earned my respect, human." Elijah didn't smile. He didn't need to. His eyes softened slightly, but his body remained ready. He wasn't here to prove anything to her. He was here to prove something to himself. That humans, despite their limitations, had strength. Not just physical strength, but the kind of strength that came from within. Jaira's eyes met his, and for the first time she saw him not as an opponent, but as an equal. She had come into this tournament thinking that the legends of human warriors were nothing more than myths. But now, standing before her, was proof that those myths were true. Elijah Cole wasn't just a man, he was a symbol of something far greater. The moment stretched out between them. Jaira could feel the weight of the decision she had to make. She had the power to end it all. But now she realized that true strength wasn't about who could strike the hardest. It was about understanding when to stop, when to step back and acknowledge the power in your opponent's will to fight. With a deep breath, Jaira dropped her weapon. She didn't need it anymore. She had learned the lesson she needed to learn. She had found a new respect for humanity, for its strength of spirit. "I yield," she said, her voice steady but filled with something new, humility. The crowd erupted into applause. It was a moment that would go down in history. Jaira, the undefeated princess, had acknowledged the strength of a human warrior. The battle was over, and humanity had won. But more than that, it was a victory for something far more important. The human spirit. The arena, once filled with the roar of a crowd eagerly anticipating a final victory, was now hushed. The people from all corners of the galaxy were witnessing something they had never imagined. The mighty Jaira, princess of the Xalian people, had yielded. The hum of energy, the sounds of battle, the atmosphere that had once been so charged with violence had now transformed into one of reflection and awe. Jaira stood in the center of the arena, her shoulders relaxed, her breathing slow and steady. The glow of her energy manipulation, once bright and overwhelming, had faded, and she was now simply a woman, a warrior who had learned something new. Something she had never expected to learn, especially not from a human. Elijah Cole, the human warrior who had defied the odds at every turn, stood at the edge of the arena, watching her. His chest heaved with the effort of the battle he had just fought, but his eyes were clear. He had not come to the tournament for fame or glory. He had come to show his people, and perhaps even himself, that humans had a place in this galaxy. And now, as he stood across from Jaira, he realized that the victory was not just about winning a fight. It was about proving something far more important, that humanity, for all its imperfections, had strength. The crowd was still silent, waiting for the next moment to unfold. Jaira slowly turned to face Elijah, her gaze steady. She could see the respect in his eyes, but also something else. He wasn't looking at her as a defeated opponent. He was looking at her as someone who had learned something new, just like he had. Jaira took a step forward. She had thought before this fight that she knew what strength meant. But now, as she stood there, she realized how wrong she had been. She had believed that strength was something you could measure by the power of your blows, by the energy you could manipulate, or by the victories you could claim in the arena. But Elijah had shown her that strength was more than that. Strength was the ability to stand up after every fall, to keep going when there was no reason to do so. It was the resilience of the human spirit, the refusal to give up, no matter how many times life knocked you down. She had never seen anything like it. "I never thought I would meet a warrior like you," Jaira said, her voice low but steady. "You've proven me wrong in ways I didn't expect. I had no idea that humanity was capable of such strength." Elijah didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. He simply nodded, acknowledging her words. It was enough. In that moment, they both understood something that went beyond the battle they had fought. They understood what it meant to respect each other as warriors, as individuals, and as equals. Jaira lowered her head slightly, a gesture that carried weight in the eyes of those watching. It was not just a sign of respect for Elijah, but a sign of humility. The princess of the Zalian people had always prided herself on her strength. But now she saw that true strength came not from the ability to crush others, but from the willingness to learn, to grow, and to adapt. Elijah stepped forward, meeting her halfway. The arena was still, and the crowd, sensing the change in the air, fell silent. There was no more need for violence. The battle had been won, but not by force. "Strength isn't about what we can do to others," Elijah said, his voice calm and steady. "It's about what we can endure, what we can overcome. And it's about helping each other, not tearing each other apart." Jaira's eyes softened as she listened. It was something she had never considered before, not in this way. She had always believed that a warrior's strength lay in their ability to dominate others, to control the battlefield, to win at any cost. But Elijah had shown her that true strength came from within, from the will to keep going, even when the odds were against you, from the ability to stand by your principles and to fight for what you believed in, even if it meant risking everything. The crowd slowly began to applaud, their clapping hesitant at first, but growing stronger as they realized what had just occurred. This was not just a victory for Elijah. It was a victory for humanity, for strength, and for understanding. The Zalian princess, who had once mocked the idea of human warriors, had learned to respect them. The universe had just witnessed something extraordinary. The power of the human spirit had been acknowledged, and the legends were true. As the applause filled the arena, Jaira turned back to the crowd, raising her hand. The noise slowly died down and she spoke, her voice strong and clear. "Today, I have learned that strength is not something that can be measured by size or power alone," she said. "It is something that comes from the heart, from the will to keep fighting, to never give up. And I have seen that strength in the human warrior, Elijah Cole. His spirit is unbreakable, and for that I offer him my respect." The crowd erupted into cheers. They had witnessed something remarkable, something that would be remembered for generations. Jaira, the undefeated princess, had admitted that she had been wrong. She had seen the true power of humanity, the strength of will, the strength of heart, and the strength of unity. Elijah stood there, humbly accepting the respect that Jaira offered. He had come to this tournament with one goal in mind: to show the galaxy that humanity had something to offer. And now, he had achieved more than he could have ever imagined. He had earned the respect of an entire galaxy, and most importantly, he had earned Jaira's respect. Not through force, not through violence, but through something deeper. After the ceremony, as the crowd slowly dispersed, Jaira approached Elijah once more. She stood in front of him, her posture regal yet relaxed, and her eyes filled with a newfound respect. "You are more than a warrior," Jaira said, her voice softening. "You are a leader, and I would be honored to have you by my side." Elijah looked at her, surprised by her words. "I'm not a leader. I'm just a human trying to do my part." Jaira smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "Maybe. But sometimes the greatest leaders don't realize their potential until the moment they're tested. You've shown me that." Elijah thought for a moment, then nodded. "Maybe I'll take you up on that offer someday, but for now, I think I'll go back to Earth. There's a lot of work to be done there." Jaira's expression softened. "Of course. But know this, Elijah Cole, you will always have a place here among the stars. The galaxy now knows what humanity is capable of, and that is something no one can take away from you." With that, Jaira stepped back, allowing Elijah to make his way toward the exit of the arena. The crowd continued to cheer, the sound growing louder as Elijah walked toward the ship that would take him back to Earth. He was no longer just a human warrior. He was a symbol of something much greater, a symbol of humanity's strength, resilience, and spirit. As the ship lifted off from the surface of Zaloth, Elijah looked back at the planet below. He had fought for more than just victory. He had fought for the honor of his people, for the future of humanity. And as the stars stretched out before him, he knew that the journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had just begun to make its mark. The legend of Elijah Cole, the human who defeated the greatest warriors in the galaxy, would live on for centuries. But more than that, the spirit of humanity, the courage to stand up, to fight, and to never give up would echo throughout the stars forever.